Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Women Like Me. I'm Julie Fairhurst, and I'm here today with the lovely Linda Nelson. And Linda wrote in the fifth volume of Women Like Me, which just recently came out, From Lost to Living. And she is in chapter 10 of the book. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Linda, and then we're going to dive into her story. So Linda's story is called Someday I'll Be Okay, but someday never comes. It's not a date on the calendar. I love your title. Okay. So Linda is a business education graduate and is currently semi-retired and has recently launched her dream coaching business with her Believe in You Academy. She is now able to utilize her experiences and lessons learned throughout her varied career to help people soar from being aimless and unmotivated to finding clarity and confidence and ultimate belief in themselves. She provides tools and resources along with her coaching to help female solopreneurs rediscover their best self, identify what holds them back from achieving their very best life, and turn their passions into profit and lead a life of intention and impact. Yay! So welcome, Linda. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So why don't we start off by you just maybe telling us, why did you decide to write your story?
Well, yeah, I can't say that I was like super excited. This was something I was dying to do. I'd love to say that. I think in the back of my mind, kind of one of those bucket list things was to write a book. And way, way back, early on in my career, I actually dreamt of being a published author and speaking to many, many people, as a result of that. But that was, one of those shelved dreams, how that goes as life happens and you get married and have kids and do your job and all of those things. So fast forward then to semi-retirement and opening up this coaching business that I started a little over a year ago. And one of the exercises in there that I work with them on is writing their stories, which is interesting, I think. And I've always been a believer in listening to stories. Like, I think that's really what connects us. And stories, I feel like I've been listening to stories my whole life, but I've been very guarded about sharing mine and, risking being vulnerable. And it occurred to me as I was, working with my clients, my most recent clients, as they're in the midst of writing their stories and all of the lessons and the insights and the breakthroughs. This particular group, more than other groups that I've coached, really found healing through writing stories. And this was, I have to say, this group maybe was more broken and needed healing than perhaps other groups that I've done as a total group. And so, they just had lived through some tough stuff, and they were very quiet people. And so sharing it was very private. They learned to share that not only on paper, but also on, in a group and realize that there were more things that we'd each gone through than they ever realized. They just weren't alone. And so mostly, I guess, it was like, okay, I'm expecting these guys to write a story which is uncomfortable for them, and talking about it in a group, which is, again, uncomfortable for them. Like, who was I not to do that then and take my story out? Because obviously, I had hidden a lot of my story. Other people. So that was sort of the impetus, I guess. And
well, that's wonderful, Linda. It's very insightful, and it's interesting that you learned a little bit from your group as well. And that also, seeing their courage, you thought, hey, I got to give myself a little kick here and get myself in gear as well. So well, good for you. That's good. So I loved your story. I thought so Linda writes a little bit about family and those kinds of things. And Linda is the oldest of her family, and I'm the oldest. we have a blended family, but from my original family, I am the oldest as well. So Linda and I kind of, I get Linda. I get some of the stuff Linda's got going on. So, I'd like to just read one little chapter from the beginning of your book, Linda, that I thought was interesting. You say, growing up as the oldest child in a family of 6 children made it hard to be noticed. There were so many voices in the chaos, and a value that was expressed often in our home that I took into my young, tender heart was children were to be seen and not heard. And I think that was, that was in my family as well. That, and if you don't eat quick enough, you don't get seconds.
That's also true.
Yeah, but I remember that in my family as well, and I don't know if it's like I don't see it as much in the new generation of parenting, but it certainly was out there with us.
Yes, that's so true. And thankfully that isn't a value that's expressed so much, because I think that that particular value made children feel, unintentionally so, but made them feel like they had no voice. And so when problems emerged, you tended to go within yourself to find solutions, which there's good and bad, obviously, about that. But it was just back in a time frame where you probably experienced this too, where we wanted to project the perfect little family outside that home that went to church and everything was fine, but you did not discuss your problems outside the home, because they worked hard to create this, I don't want to say facade, but you know what I mean, that we're a perfect little family. Might be a lot of us, but we're managing everything just beautifully, and the problem stayed within the home.
They certainly did. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, well, today with social media, they can't hide. There's no hiding anymore.
So, each side has pluses and minuses, obviously.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that well myself. There was another one that I wanted to just talk to you about. So in your book, you say that there's 2 stories that you wanted to discuss within the story of the chapter that you wrote. And the first one really got to me, because I know even with my own children, I've said unintentional things that I didn't mean anything by, but the next thing you find out years later, it's like, well, why do you believe that? Oh, well, you told me. I'm like, oh, did I? I didn't mean to do that. Sure. But when you said, when I was young, my dad often introduced me to others like this, and note, it was with a great deal of pride. He said, this is my oldest daughter, Linda. She is thin now, but she'll fill out. That's just it's an interesting way to introduce your daughter. And so for you, a little bit further down, what you took that to mean is, I'm okay now. I'm not okay now, but someday I will be.
Right.
You want to just elaborate on how you felt with that, or?
Well, it was just that, I think that led to my constant striving to search, be somebody, be better, be more, be whatever someday. And of course, that's not a day. It's just elusive. You'll never get there. But that is how I took it. It was like that word yet. She's not okay. She's a little thin now, but she'll fill out someday. He didn't say someday, but that's what I took into my heart. And of course, further, I guess toward the beginning of the story, I talk about how I grew up just painfully thin, like unimaginable right now, based on my body type now. But I was bullied a lot and picked on and made fun of. So the skinny thing was already there. In other words, I was already insecure. So anyone that I loved, like my dad, pointed that out, really made me feel even more deeply that I'm not okay the way I am.
It was almost like he was, I can't remember, the word's not coming to me right now, but it's almost like all those other kids and people who said those things, now all of a sudden, and then he said it, it just makes it like, oh, it must be true because now my dad's saying it. But of
Right.
course, he didn't mean anything by it.
No,
No, of course not.
I
Just
mean, he certainly wasn't looking to, hurt me with it. That's for sure.
no,
But
no.
again, as I was growing up, I mean, this sounds crazy now, but I would like eat horribly poor and lots at mealtime and then just go lay on the couch so that I would gain weight. I did crazy stuff, to gain weight
Oh,
back in the day.
yeah,
And so, it's like top of mind when you're looking at food in that way.
of
And then that
course.
comment obviously is able to really go into an already bruised, insecure heart, if you will.
Yes, yes. Oh, yeah. And also the sentence where you say, I'm okay now. I'm not okay now, but someday I will be. And I do believe that that can relate to so many things.
Mm-hmm.
That can relate to just so many things. And when I was reading that, I was even thinking back on some of the times in my life when people said things or I got messages, whether they were meant to be a certain way or not. And where I felt like, okay, well, one day, one day I'll be able to do this, or one day. And you're right, one day sometimes doesn't come.
Right.
So you're always
Or at least
living
it doesn't come in the ways
that we
that we
think.
expect. Yeah.
Yes, yes. But also it's waiting. It's that living in anticipation
Mm-hmm.
for something
Well,
to
there's
happen.
a continual, for me, it played out in a continual striving. And I think I talk a little bit about my growing up in a church that really got works kind of messed up. And so in my head, doing better, performing well would lead to the love and acceptance that I craved.
Yeah.
That isn't really how our Creator designed us to be. We're
Right.
good the way we are. But I didn't really get those lessons
No.
till in my 40s when I read the Bible for really the first time. I had my own Bible.
Yeah.
And so it was like a real eye-opening, what? God loves you just the way you are? Like you don't have to do good works and pray people out of purgatory and whatever, all of those things that you believe as a child is going to lead to being accepted and loved when you believe it's works that does that. So yeah, you can see a screwed up little girl for a while.
Yeah. But I mean, and this is the exciting thing is that you realized it. At least you didn't, live your whole entire life in that mode. You eventually woke up, and that's the key. Like we all have stuff that we internalize or from our childhoods or being bullied or whatever happened. But the key is to hopefully somewhere along the line come out of that. And so that we can pass messages and lessons along to help others. And also that we can live our best lives as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm so passionate about my work, because that lack of confidence, even though I was performing and doing things that would suggest this is one confident woman, I really wasn't inside. Right. And I think that really does resonate with lots of women where through circumstances, through unintentional comments, through all those things, as we bang around in life, can lead to those feelings of not enough or, not good enough or not capable enough, not smart enough. I think we take that on in a big way. And so my work has just been affirmed that no, it's important to help people make sense of some of those limiting beliefs that are in their way that may have been true at one point that aren't true anymore. But you're right. It's being aware of them. You can't fix what you don't know is broken. And in my case, it took that, Bible study and reading the Bible and understanding, whoa, I've been thinking about this all wrong, for a good portion of my life up until that point.
Yeah, well, it's almost half your life almost. Really, if you're waking up sort of in your 40s and realizing things. But again, I believe that the key is waking up. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter when we do it, that just the key is definitely waking up so that we can live our best life for sure. So Linda, if you were talking to one of your ladies and they were telling you that, they felt that, that maybe on the outside look like they exceed confidence, but on the inside they're like a shy, thinking, that they're not doing well, or what advice would you give them? What would you help them with, do you think?
Well, in my work with my clients, I generally start with helping them discover their gifts,
Mm,
because a woman in that not enough mode, or a
yeah,
lack of confidence mode, or self-doubt mode, or however we want, fear
yeah,
is a lot of it. They have to really embrace their goodness. And I want them to know with every fiber of their being how much they're loved, how much they're valued. And it starts with understanding how your creator made you and what your good stuff is, and the
yeah,
things that people compliment you on.
yes.
That's not by mistake. But I want them to love themselves unconditionally, just like God.
Oh, yeah,
So that's step one. And then
yeah,
once you can embrace that, your
yeah,
mind is more open to, well, some things happened to me that maybe weren't fun or weren't necessarily nurturing, or whatever that might be in someone's
yeah,
story. But I got to start with loving myself. So that would be step one.
yeah,
And then we're able to go back with loving ourselves and look at it from a different lens when we go back to those times where maybe that limiting belief or that pain started, and learn to rewrite that in a more empowering manner.
mm-hmm,
I guess I would start with, you got to really embrace who you are, because there's
yeah.
no one else like you in the whole world.
No, there isn't. And I love what you said about helping them discover their gifts, because I believe we all, especially everyone has gifts, but as women, as we get a little bit older in life, I find that we have a lot of wisdom. We have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of gifts, lots of gifts to use for ourselves and to pass along with others. And I agree. I think that a lot of times, like even in my book program, I'll get so many women who will say, well, I'd like to write my story, but I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's an important story. I don't know if anybody would read it. And then they tell me a little about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
like that's a fabulous story, and absolutely you will help people. And but they don't necessarily see it themselves.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it often takes someone outside of us. I have to say, in this process, I kind of looked at that too. Like, okay, here's a person who struggled with confidence and eventually found it. Like, that ain't a movie maker. You know what I mean? It was like, I do have those thoughts. Like,
mm-hmm.
how could that possibly make a difference? But that's what we're here for. We're here to make a difference. And
Yeah.
stories connect us in ways nothing else can.
Yes, and there's going to be groups of people that will also uh, gravitate your way, right? Like there's going to be certain people that will resonate with you, that will want to learn from you. I just think there's just so much that people have to offer out there, for sure. And I think it's fabulous what you're doing. I think that confidence and learning people's gifts is such a big thing, and it is, and a big confidence boost for them as well. And I love how you're um, getting them together in groups and discussing their stories. I think that's
Yeah.
just so beautiful.
Yeah, there is such power in groups, because
Yeah,
it shows you're not alone. We can be very different from
yeah,
the outside, or so it
yeah,
appears. But
yeah,
when we start talking about what's inward, what's on that inner self,
yeah,
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 there's commonalities than we can even imagine.
yeah, yeah. One other thing I wanted to ask you about with your story was when you wanted to go to university or college,
Mhm.
and unfortunately your family said, well, we can only afford to send so many people, and unfortunately you're not one of them. So did you want to like talk a little bit about that and what that, because that seemed to really drive you.
It did. My dad had said, well, I didn't save money for you to go to college. I saved money for your brothers. I have three
Oh,
sisters and three brothers. And
yeah,
so that started me on that journey of women's voices weren't as important. His point
right.
was, and again, this is the time
Yes, of
that I
course.
grew up in.
Yeah,
Um, it was like, well, you're just going to find someone and get married, and that person will take care of you. You're like, why do you need to go? It's not like you need to get a better job. You know what I'm saying?
right. I
That
do.
was just the thinking in those
Yes,
days.
yes,
But again, to me, who's trying to prepare for someday, you
yes.
know, I was looking for ways to make my someday come faster, I guess. I
Yeah,
mean, I just thought of that right now,
yeah,
but it led to a lot of it's things that didn't serve me so well in the workplace initially with, women were also meant to be seen and not heard, that their opinions weren't valued. And
right.
my first corporate job, I mean, I was one of four women who reported to direct reports of the founder president kind of thing. So I looked
Yeah,
around and there really weren't a lot of women in my position. I mean, they just weren't there.
yeah,
And so men called the shots, and, all the great meetings happened, you know, in the parking lot while they were smoking or in the bathroom or
yeah,
whatever. There just
yeah,
weren't women in those meetings. And
yes,
so I had to break into that
yeah,
culture, if you will, you know.
yes,
And so, yeah, I had some authority figure issues as it relates to men, and I carried some of that forward. And thankfully, not long,
yes,
but my striving to perform better actually came in handy because I was looked to as someone who works hard, who will do what she
hmm,
needs to do to get the job done, and
yeah,
I became accepted into that culture,
yes,
not because I was a woman, but because I was capable. And so
right.
that was an important lesson eventually, but
Mm.
obviously that didn't happen overnight. It took time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's and you're right. It again, the I it still happens a little bit out there, depending on which business that you're in. But I think a lot less than it did then. And yeah, I would imagine being thrown into, well, not thrown, but in that kind of environment. You need to be, all of a sudden your femininity needs to go out the door. You got to be strong. You got to be
Mhm.
confident in what you're about to say and what you're about to do. And or you just get beat down, I suppose. Just like I mean, I understand it. I get it
Yeah.
because that's the way it was. But it would be you were like one of the icebreakers to get in there and
Yeah.
sort of break the ice for the rest of us to follow you along.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
know.
were definitely, I would say we were um, opening a path for future generations because we had to and it was hard to be
Yeah,
female in a male dominated world. You
yeah,
had to get along, but, and play the game, but you didn't really have the right equipment. I'll
right.
just say that. And so you didn't
Right.
know those rules. You didn't play
Yeah,
by the rules, and it
yeah,
felt really inauthentic.
yeah,
It wasn't you. And
yes,
that's why I work hard, I think, with women now
yes,
to really understand who they are authentically, because that person's always been there. It's
yes,
just the world's covered it up with lots of yuck. So let's get rid of all that yuck
yeah,
and see who you authentically are, who you always
yeah,
are,
yes,
so we can help you find your voice and
yes,
and uh, go live that life that we've been given with intention
yes.
and impact, because we're all here for a purpose.
Yes, I 100% agree. 100%. Yeah. Well, Linda, I want to kind of close by your quote in your book, in the
Mhm.
book where you wrote your story. I absolutely love it. I just love it. And what you say is, your someday is now too. You deserve it. You just need to learn it for yourself. I love that. As stated in a quote from my favorite childhood movie, The Wizard of Oz, you've always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it yourself. I get shivers when I read that. And I've seen that movie a million times, but I never really, I remember it, but now I see it like just so differently now. And when and to hear it, it's just, I love that quote. And it's so true. So true. You've always had the power. You just needed to learn it yourself. Because I think it's so true, like what you were saying earlier about how, the authentic stuff, we're covered up with a bunch of yuck.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff we don't want to deal with, or whatever happened, and it's just there keeping who we are down, and our passion, and our enthusiasm for life, and but you just had to learn it yourself. I just love that. I love it, Linda. Well, thank you so much. So what we'll be doing is we'll put in the comments some of Linda's links if anybody wants to reach out to her to talk about anything at all, or to ask her about her coaching program that she does. So we'll have that in there for anyone. And I just want to thank you, Linda. I want to thank you for writing in the book. Remember, she's chapter 10, if anybody wants to read Linda's story, it's fabulous. We only touched on a tiny bit. She's got that much in there. So it's good. You'll get a lot from reading it. So if anybody wants to find you or anything, they can do that in the link.
All right. Well, thank you too, Julie, because this is such important work. Just as I'm working, in my space with writing stories, I just don't think that we can underestimate the value that doing that does, because we have a lot of negative thoughts going on in our head all day long, every day.
Yeah.
And even though we try to fill that with positive, the negatives break through pretty easily. Yeah. And so getting your thoughts on paper, number one, where you can just look at it and go, well, that's not that bad. Now that it's,
Yeah.
But we tend to, when we just think on it, we only have our own voice that's paying attention to those thoughts. Yeah. They can seem very dramatic. They can seem exaggerated, Yeah. And so helping people heal through telling a story and then putting it out in the world is just such important work. And I thank you, Julie, for the opportunity. It's been an amazing, healing. I feel like I took a step forward through the comfort zone into the courageous zone by doing this.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Linda. I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, well, we will end this chat for today. And as I said, all of Linda's information will be in the comments below. So if you need to reach out to her, you can go ahead and do so. So thanks again, Linda. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.